And I'm going to, Dick, you can unmute and remind everybody that we are recording the meeting.
You just did, but I'll do it again. I want to welcome everybody to our May 10th General Member Meeting of REA. It's great to have you here with us today. Just a friendly reminder that we do record the meetings and post them on our YouTube channel. So just remember that as you later in the meeting make comments. But it's great to see you all again today. The minutes of our prior meeting, last month's meeting, will be posted in our newsletter and are always online. Board minutes are also available online, and just a reminder that board meetings are open to general members if you want. Treasurer's reports, the board receives those each month, and if you want a copy of the treasurer's report, all you have to do is to email our new treasurer, but we have an email address online. Abby Salace is our new treasurer, and if you email her, she will forward you a copy of last month's report. By way of updates, news, the board just prior to this meeting met and has decided that REA will return to in-person meetings in July. So look forward to that. We'll be back at the War Memorial Buildings at 11 o'clock. The board meets just prior to that, and our board meetings in the War Memorial Buildings are in room 3 of that building. They start at 9:30. Now there's no meeting in June. We'll put this in our newsletter, but that's the month that we traditionally have taken off, and historically it's been for the purpose of not competing with the open enrollment health fair that SERS runs. But as you know, that's being moved. The open enrollment period is being moved to October-November timeframe, because the city and SDPBA have decided to switch their healthcare plan year from the fiscal year to a calendar year basis, and kind of match it up with the rest of the world. But there's a lot involved in that transfer. So we won't meet in June. But we will see you in person, hopefully at the War Memorial Building in July. Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce one of my favorite people of all time, Cynthia Queen from SERS, to give us a SERS update. Cynthia?
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. One of my favorite REA presidents of all time, because that would be tricky if I didn't say it that way, because Jim lets me into the meeting, so I can't mess that up. But anyway, it's great to see you all. I want to say hello and thank you to Abby, new treasurer. That's great. You got more money to count, so good job. Nice to see you all. Speak about money and budgets. I first want to say that our CEO, Greg Rodemaker, who loves to attend these meetings, he is currently over at the Real Live City Hall with Marcel Voorhees-Rossmann, our deputy CEO, and Ted LaSalvia, our controller, because this morning they are giving our budget presentation to the city council. Now, you should be aware that the city council does not approve SDSER's budget. That's the job of the board, but we are a very transparent organization, and each year we do an informational presentation of our budget to the city council. And I'm hoping that it's going well. It's a big day for Ted, and I'm pretty sure they're pleased that their pension bill will not be as high this year. So thanks to investments. So at any rate, I'm looking forward to hearing how that went, but that is why they are not here right now. And Greg sends his regards to everyone here. They are over there taking care of business, making sure we get you all paid. Next, Dick did a great job summarizing what's going on with the healthcare. It's happening for the active employees too. We just got our email telling us what to do. And so I'm hoping all of you received, so hard to see these things on here, but should have received one letter by now that's telling you what's going on, and we have all the information on our website. And next week you should be receiving a second letter that's got more details, mostly confirming what the premiums are, because they are not changing. Now, this is a transition, but the main thing I want to say is there's no change to the providers. So for most of us, the vast majority of people once we find a healthcare that we're good with, we really don't want to change it. We we don't look forward to that year when we may have to make a decision. So this should be just a nice mellow year where we're all, I love my Sharp healthcare. They've been taking care of me. And whatever you've got, I hope you like it and you're satisfied with that one. If someone does need to make a change, you can certainly do that this June during this open enrollment period. But there will also be another opportunity in the fall, which is the more formal one. As big of a change as this is, I feel like the communications have gone well. We get phone calls, but we get phone calls every day about health coverage. And so I hope that is going well. If any of your friends ask you about it, just be sure to tell them to look on the SD-CERS website and look for a letter in the mail, and you can always give us a call, here to answer those phone calls for you. And also, you all look healthy. I'm glad to see that. That's good. Now, I'm going to give you something to smile about. Well, I'm going to tease you into a smile. This week are the SD-CERS board meetings, and there's a series of the committees that we have. On Thursday, it'll be disability, business and governance, and investments, and then on Friday will be the full board meeting. I think one of the most exciting things we'll be talking about at this month's board meeting, and what I think the retirees get most excited about, is what might be our cost of living adjustment for the coming year. The stock market and a number of factors have a lot to do with that. It is absolutely a precise formula that is in the municipal code that determines what that is. And so our materials are posted online this week, and we will absolutely be announcing whatever the cost of living adjustment is on Friday, right after that board meeting. That's something we do annually, and certainly want to make that easy for information for people to have. And so be looking for that because that will tell you what sort of a raise you will be getting on your pension benefit that you receive. So I'm looking forward to all that information. Does anybody have any questions for me? Well, I think that means I did a decent job explaining things. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I do have a question. Yes, please. Is that my friend Joan out there?
Yeah, it's me. We get a lot of questions about the bank. And they want to know what is it and all, basic.
Yep. And the best thing I would refer you to is that there is a complete document on the website under the board agendas. If you have any trouble, Joan, I'd be happy to email it to you. But it specifically states the details of the bank, how everything is calculated. And on Friday on our website, that information will be posted as well. Each year we state what the total amount is, what is being paid out, and if there is a bank, that's obviously a big deal of what people look forward to as well. So please tell them to look online on Friday for that information. And if they are not online kind of people, they can call us or call you, and we will have all that information at that time. Good question. Thank you. So what I was saying was, I'm a plant person. My husband's a big plant guy, so I'm pretty excited about your presenter today. And so anyway, thanks for getting good people to speak, because otherwise there'd be too much competition. Great to see you all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Cynthia. Great report. Okay, with that, I'd like to adjourn our business meeting and go to our program today. And to introduce our speaker, I'd like to introduce our favorite webmaster, Marianne Stepnowski.
Make sure you unmute, Marianne.
Unmute. See if I can do it.
She has to do it herself.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes just pressing the space bar works. There you go.
Got it.
Hello, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Mark Berninger. He is the Natural Resources Manager, or the equivalent of a senior environmental planner with the city of San Diego. In 2017, Mark joined the city as an environmental biologist in the Public Utilities Department. And then he became the Natural Resources Manager in 2019. He's been there ever since. He's very busy managing a team of biologists and interns for the Open Space Division of the Parks and Rec Department. His team oversees an amazing amount of things that the city has. They have a rare plant species monitor program, and the multi-species habitat conservation program, the Vernal pool multi-habitat conservation program, the right of entry permit program, and he provides stewardship for the natural resources across the 26,000, yes, 26,000 acres of open space in the city of San Diego. I've heard Mark speak a couple of months ago, and I must say I was very impressed with what he had to say. And I know we all have our reasons why we love living, working, and playing in San Diego, but believe me, after this presentation, you will have even more reasons to be impressed with the city of San Diego and the county. So, Mark, it's up to you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody here. It's such a great group of people to see everybody. And I want to thank you as former city employees for laying the groundwork for city employees like myself and my team. So, thank you guys for paving the trail on the number of different things out there. So again, if it wasn't for the retired employees, we wouldn't be as successful as we are in our program. So I have a little slideshow I'm gonna set up here real quick, and I'm gonna share my screen with you guys, and we'll go from there. So I got a lot of screens up, so I apologize. I'm gonna make sure I get the right one here. Okay, can everybody see that all right?
In a minute, yes.
There we go.
All right. Hopefully this will actually pull up. Okay, I need to swap screens real quick. Apologize for this. It never stays where I want it to stay. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Everybody can see that all right?
Yes,
Yeah.
looks
All
perfect.
right. Great. Well, again, I'm going to talk about a few different things, but it really kind of talks about conserving rare species in the city of San Diego. To give you a little bit more background in my life, I'm a natural resource manager, but also in the senior planner kind of track in the city of San Diego. I'm the only person in the city of San Diego that has my job. So it's not like there's another natural resource manager somewhere else in another department anywhere. But I do work very closely with colleagues in public utilities, real estate assets and airports, also hand in hand with our planning department and the development services department, as we kind of get projects moving, and if they have impacts to sensitive species, I certainly get in the loop there. But the reason I have a job, the reason we have this giant alphabet soup that Marianne tried to talk about a little bit, is because of the amount of resources we have in the city. And we have, okay, there we go. A little bit of history. In 1997, or a little bit before 1997, we had the great idea to implement a multiple species conservation program. Now, what that does is it conserves a bunch of different species in the city of San Diego that are threatened or endangered in some way, shape, or form, or special status species in, federally, state, or locally endangered. But in the 1993, one of those species, the California gnatcatcher, coastal California gnatcatcher, was determined to be in peril. And what really was interesting about this bird is it has very, very specific habitat requirements. Requires a lot of coastal sage scrub, and it's one of the only places in the United States where we have this coastal sage scrub is down here in the Southern California area. And we also have, from my previous time working in public utilities, one of the things I realized is early on is we have easily one of the most complicated and really complex infrastructures for wastewater and water systems in the entire United States. We have canyons, we have mesa tops, we have and we have river valleys, and we have all this stuff. And in order to get the wastewater where it needs to go, we had to utilize a lot of these canyon areas, which are also these areas that happen to be undeveloped. And so as a process of that, we were sued by the EPA under the Clean Water Act for having multiple different spills and everything. So what we decided to do, and some of you may have been on these early conversations, is to develop a program that really conserve these threatened and endangered species and their habitats across the city of San Diego, and put a real emphasis on preserving habitats and their linkages to other habitats to help our endangered species and our biodiversity kind of flourish in our city. One of the final document came out in 1998. Many years of planning and development all went into this. And it's a regional document. And there's about 12 different jurisdictions in the county that have taken part of it. And some of them have moved forward with them. Some of them haven't fully developed their plans yet. But we were one of the first multiple species conservation programs in the United States. We were certainly the first in San Diego County. And we set this really conservation strategy for the city that really kind of links these biological areas, these core areas, and to each other through these habitat linkages. And if we're looking at what it conserves in the entire city, so it's a 50-year plan. It's a permit from the federal government, essentially. And this is a 50-year plan. We're halfway through. We're in year 25 right now of this plan. And it conserves, you can see right there, the area that this is conserved is that's our vernal pool planning area that I have up there, but it's also the multiple species conservation area. What it is, that's the city of San Diego, and within the city of San Diego, we're going to conserve 206,000 acres as part of our multiple habitat planning area. That's our citywide preserve, so to speak. And in that preserve, it covers 85 different species, 46 plants, and 39 animals. And as part of that, we monitor those every year, most of them every year, and report on them every year to the federal government and to the state government and to municipal government. One thing I think we'll talk about a little bit, here are all the different municipalities that also have joined in our conservation plan. They're not all together yet, and some of them are in different areas of flux, and some decided not to implement them at all. But you can see how this was kind of broken down in a kind of a category. Here is the city of our multiple planning area and all the linkages to those areas. You can see those areas in orange are what we call the core biological areas, and you can see a lot of them are associated with our river systems and rivers and streams, and those are very, very important things to think about as we move and we kind of develop our processes and live our lives, that everything kind of flows downstream, whether we pour it off into our yard or down the storm drain. All those things kind of end up in these core biological linkages areas. You know, we have lots of endangered species that use these areas to move back and forth. We've seen, you know, mountain lions, coyotes, bobcats, all of these different types of animals use these linkages as corridors to move back and forth. Now, we don't see them as much anymore, especially in the urbanized areas, but you can still go down right in the middle of Mission Valley into San Diego River and find a lot of really, really cool birds, great plants, a great, healthy, thriving ecosystem in the river surrounded by intensive development. And so that's kind of what my staff does, is we make sure that our development and our process and progress can happen while also conserving all these species. There's a lot of different things we're looking at, but you can see here all the areas in gray are areas that we have conserved as our citywide preserve. Some of those areas in the eastern part of the county, you can see are way, you know, this is an area called Marone Valley, which is way out in the east part of the city or in the county. And it borders Mexico. There's no fences out there. There's cows that come from Mexico and graze in the properties out there. But we've preserved those acres in perpetuity for watershed management and for habitat we have several rare and endangered species that live on those habitats. They're owned by public utilities, but our staff and the public utility biologists go out there and monitor these areas every year, looking for our rare plants, our vernal pools, and all that stuff. So we keep really good track on what's there. Within the city limits, You can see a lot of these areas are lots in the middle of the city. That's our urban canyon ranger district, you know, where we have many of these small urban canyons that also have really high habitat value, but they're just isolated. So we want to make sure that we continue those the connectivity to some of those areas for people and for the animals that live there. But this is the multiple habitat planning area. If you've ever heard MHPA, the gray is MHPA. This is our what we call our citywide preserve. And what the citywide preserve is, within the city, it's 51,000 acres. And if you know, you're looking at some other cities in the United States, no one else, not Los Angeles, not New York, not LA, Houston, none of these major metropolitan areas have what we have. None of them. The only city that comes close to having the amount of urban parkland that city of San Diego does is Juneau, Alaska, and they have annexed a state preserve that is hundreds of 100,000 square miles, you know. But the city of Juneau is a small city, as we all know. It's the capital of Alaska, but it's still a very small city. But the footprint of that city is gigantic. But our city also gigantic footprint. But we have a real opportunity, and we've had this opportunity to preserve these acres, and 27,000 of them are open to the public. And again, I talk about, we have 85 of the rare, threatened, endangered species, over 178 different trailheads within these open space areas, and over 225 miles of trail. And we're constantly building those trailheads and increasing our trail miles every year. So kind of as a counterpoint to that, I like to kind of explain that, you know, the city of San Diego is on par with many of our national parks as far as acreage, you know, go. You can see there, Bryce Canyon, Utah is 35,000 acres. You know, between the park district and public utilities, we've exceeded that. Carlsbad Caverns, you know, Haleakala in Hawaii, and in Mesa Verde in Colorado. These are all huge managed parcels of land by the federal government. And the city of San Diego has as much or even more than those. And that's what makes this city so special, in my opinion, is we have this vibrant metropolitan community, but interspersed within that are these amazing natural areas that can be as small as 4 or 5 acres and as big as Mission Trails, you know, 8,000 acres out in the eastern part of the city. So these are all really cool things to have in our city. And I don't think that a lot of people know that. So that's one of the things I'd like to get out there. If you take anything away from this, know that we have the largest urban preserve in the lower 48. Better than any of those cities, you know, Seattle or Austin or any of those cities that have real environmental ethos. We got them beat too. So, you know, that we can hang our hat on that. And that, again, stems from the dedication and work that all you guys have all put in the previous years. So thank you for that. I'm going to talk about our preserve system a little bit more. Just in that, the fact that we, as part of our permit, we've got to preserve 52,000 acres out of that final giant preserve area by the year 2037. So we're about halfway there, and we've got about 90% of that final preserve built out. It's a little bit more now, probably close to 92 or so. But we have and a companion part to our multiple species conservation plan is our vernal pool conservation plan, which added another 7 species to our habitat to our conservation. And those species are associated directly with vernal pools and the habitats directly around vernal pools. Those include fairy shrimp, 2 different types of fairy shrimp, which are these amazing little crustaceans that hopefully we can get into a little bit later. And then several different species of plants, some of which live nowhere else in the world except for San Diego. So that's something, again, we can hang our hat on, that we have several species of plants that live in the city of San Diego, and 90% plus of the population of that entire population of plants is in our open space preserves. So if we don't do our job right, we could be faced with a planetary extinction that would potentially be on our shoulders at that point. So we try very hard to conserve those plants. and explain why it's important to conserve those plants to anybody who will listen to me, really. So, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today. I'm going to go through. So this is a lot of detail in here, but this plant list, or this list, covers all of the different species that we cover in our multiple species conservation program. There'll be a test at the end of this, so remember, study hard. But as you can see, there's a lot of plants on here. There's a lot of different animals. You know, we have all the way from the Torrey Pines up in Del Mar down to the San Diego fairy shrimp and Riverside fairy shrimp that live in Otay Mesa. Down on the border, we have the San Diego horton lizard places, and then there's other plants and animals that live everywhere in the city. The Cooper's hawk, I think I've seen him in every habitat in the city has to offer. I see him flying around downtown. I see him in Mission Trails. I see them in urban areas and suburban areas. But nonetheless, they are covered under our plan. And there's a bunch of different, you know, we have bald eagles, peregrine falcons, you name it. These really charismatic species, and a lot of the species that aren't so charismatic that people don't really know too much about, like a tricolored blackbird. Looks very much like a red-winged blackbird, but it's slightly different. But they're suffering terrible losses right now across their habitat. So, and we knew this a long time ago. So we've done everything we can to avoid impacts to that species through our development and our smart development and work with our planning and development teams to really develop the area in a smart way that allows these species to proliferate in the city. California least tern, obviously a big one in Mission Bay. And one of the things that comes out of this is this interactive map for developers or people that are within the city. This is something that our planning department has developed. So if you are a developer in the city and you want to develop a piece of land or a property, this is just a screenshot of this map, but you can zoom in all the way into your neighborhood and your house and see what kind of habitat is nearby. Is that habitat conserved? Is it in our planning area? And kind of what is, and it's a really nice interactive feature that our planning department has put together. And this allows people that are going to build a home or build a housing development or a retail store, allows them to understand what's nearby so they can do their due diligence ahead of coming to the development services department saying, hey, I want a permit to put my house in here. And they're saying, well, you can't put a house in here because it has all this sensitive habitat. What you can do, though, so our multiple habitat planning area has a lot of restrictions about what can be built and how it's going to be built, but it doesn't restrict it fully. But it does restrict about 75% of the property. Say, for instance, you had 100 acres. Through the MHPA, and if you look at it, we review the property, you can develop on those 25 acres that are the least environmentally sensitive. So you're preserving those 75 acres, and those 75 acres at that point would go into conservation in perpetuity. So there'd be a conservation easement put over them. So you couldn't develop that. And then the person that you sold the property to, that also couldn't be developed. And what that does is that preserves those habitat areas and those core linkage areas that I was talking about earlier to allow those species to move from one biological area to the other. So that is something that was years have had where there are organizations now that are trying to implement this process, this habitat conservation program now in 2022. We at the city had the forethought and wherewithal to get this done in the late 90s. So we've been well ahead of the game on this, and we're moving forward as such. And it's been really, really beneficial to the city, to development in the city, and to our plants and animals that inhabit our city. And as part of that, again, I told you we had our vernal pool conservation program. Again, preserves all these amazing resources that we call vernal pools, which are they're ephemeral wetlands, essentially, is what they are. But this is the photo here is taken in early spring, and you can see this amazing little area where there's there's duckweed and there's reeds and there's endangered San Diego button celery and all kinds of stuff in our vernal pools. But if you came back to this same site and you came back to this site in August, all you would see is bare ground and rocks there. You wouldn't see any. It looks like a desert. It looks like there's nothing that had ever existed there, and a little bit of rain. And there's a clay layer that sits just underneath the surface of the soil there that allows that water to pool there, and it won't percolate through the sandy soils that we have in other places. So that allows these ecosystems to kind of pop up out of nowhere, which is absolutely still to this day is just one of those fantastic things where you go to a place in August, looks dry as a bone, you come back in March or April, and it's this verdant green landscape with pools and there are shrimp and there are tadpoles and everything in these ponds, just a proliferation of life. And we need to conserve those. We need to make sure that we're not impacting them. We've already impacted over 99% of the available habitat for vernal pools in Southern California. So the remaining 1% that we do have, we're trying to preserve and hold on to as much as we can. It's unfortunate a lot of these areas are separated from a lot of our other preserves due to the sensitivity of them and the fact that they're in locations that don't really lend themselves very well to access. So we don't get as many people out there looking at these habitats without coming out on a group with us. But it's again another very important thing that we do. Again, here's an interactive map for the Vernal Pool Habitat Conservation Program. If you so choose, there's a link at the end. You can go through this. Again, it'll show you where the vernal pools are in the city, if they're conserved, who owns them, and then a little bit of detail about what's in them and whatnot. Again, for developers and people that are looking to purchase habitat or purchase mitigation credits or whatever not, they know kind of what the resources are available to them, who owns it, and all that information is available online now. And all of this ties back into what we do and how we report this information to our partners. So we work directly with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and another group called the SANDAG is another big group, and then another group called the San Diego Monitoring and Management Program. And they are run as a collaboration between SANDAG and the U.S. Geological Survey. But what that does is it gives us the power of the USGS. USGS is this huge group of scientists that collects data, does research, and analyzes trends and habitats and everything, and gives us recommendations on a regional scale about how to manage our endangered and threatened species. We've been reporting and monitoring our rare plants for over 20 years now. I think we started in 1998, monitoring a lot of these rare plant populations, which was well before anybody else in the USGS started doing it. So the USGS and SDMMP modeled their program after our existing program. And so we're able to kind of continue our data collection in an unfettered way over 20 plus years, which gives us an amazing data set. But as part of that data, we do monitoring, and then we also have to do so we have a management report that used to come out every year, and it was very stodgy, and it was written in a way, it was all text, and it was written in a way where all the information was there, but it was very hard to kind of glean it, what exactly happened for the layperson. If you're a biologist and you're in this world, you could easily look at it and say, boom, I understand what I'm doing. But we wanted to make this accessible for the people of San Diego so they understood what it is that we do in open space and what our MSCP is and what is this whole alphabet soup of regulations and preserves and all this other stuff. So we created this management report in a format called story maps. And this is a way that we can scroll through and look at what's going on individual areas. This is Los Penasquillos Preserve, And you can see each one of these dots have a little story associated with it, with several photos, and kind of explains exactly what we do and what our actions we took that year to manage our rare species in the city. And it goes through all different, we have 9 different ranger districts, and we'll go through all the different ranger districts, talk a little bit about what they do, a little bit about what they've done the past year, and any kind of issues that they see. And we have, this is from 2020, we have a new, we just published a new version live a couple of days ago, and I have a link at the back end of this presentation to show you. But what this really shows is a lot of the issues that we face in our open spaces are different depending on the district. So we're talking, this is the San Diego River area, or a ranger district, and our ranger there, Tiffany, she deals with a lot of unsheltered folks that are living in the river, a lot of trash, those types of issues. Whereas our rangers up in Los Penasquitos or Black Mountain, they don't have the same impacts into their areas. So everything's a little bit different, and we want to kind of showcase that there's no one size fits all management strategy for any of these preserves. So we have to kind of develop that as we go. And this is a tool that allows us to do that. One of the newer areas that we added in the past year was our Choyas Lake, which is always part of the Parks and Rec department, but there was a considerable amount of open space in that Choyas Canyon, Choyas Lake area, that open space that the Community Parks Division wasn't really adequately managing or equipped to manage. So that area came over to open space for our rangers and our staff to help manage those, and as more of a natural area rather than a developed park. But I want to show you, this is we've been collecting all this data digitally, which has been really interesting for our ranger staff. Rather than written forms and logbooks and everything, now we're collecting all of our data on our telephones. We have formats, survey forms on our telephones that go to help us understand exactly what's going on in a summary table here we kind of installed. But take a look at this. There's hundreds of signs we installed, thousands of feet of repaired fence, and we started kind of keeping an eye on how much disturbance from unsheltered folks or encampments that happen in the open space. And last year previously, 2020, we abated over 300 different homeless camps that impacted almost a little over 2 acres of really prime habitat. So you can see that there's issues in here with urbanization, and there's also native plant restoration and non-native weed removal. All these different things we kind of quantify and allow the wildlife agencies and those groups that we report to understand in a snapshot what it is we did last year, because that's what they want to know at the very end of the day. What did you do, and how can we be involved and help support them too? So, but again, these are kind of details about a lot of the different things we do: the propagation of native plants, invasive species control. Willowy monardella is one of our rare plants that we help produce. We have a restoration projects in Lopez Canyon and in Mission Trails to help restore those populations of a highly endangered plant. A lot of different things as far as maintenance goes, trail maintenance and access control, and you can see habitat restoration and vernal pool maintenance. These are all things that our rangers do. Our interns and my staff of biologists are very busy across all of our open space doing all these different activities. And to go along with this management report, we have our rare plant monitoring report. So the city of San Diego, we have quite a few rare plants. We have 63 different occurrences of these rare plants that occur that are around the city. And they occur everywhere from up in, we own a tiny little parcel up in, on the top of Mount Woodson, all the way down to the Tijuana border with Mexico. We have rare plants that exist out there. You can see Mission Bay and Mission Valley is a pretty hot spot for rare plants. Again, Mission Trails, you can see that, Tierra Santa, Tecolote Canyon, all these places. These are all locations we go to every year. And we monitor them and through a protocol developed by we started the protocol, but it's now been altered and addressed by a regional group, so it meets everybody's needs regionally. But these are really, you can see there's a lot of it and there's a lot of work. We go out to each one of these locations and we have set up a monitoring point. And from that monitoring report, we do a survey around that point and collect all of the data on every single plant species that lives within that specified area. And around that, and then we take and map around the entire population of the plant species. So if they're outside that one little dot that we're monitoring, we go and play. It's essentially, if anybody's ever done geotagging or geocaching with GPS out in the field, that's what we do, except for we're looking for plants. We have a GPS location where we know mostly they are, and we have years and years of data that shows a polygon around that area, but we don't know where they're going to pop up from year to year, especially with these plants that are annual that die back every year and reseed. So it's always, we go out there with our GPS and we're like, okay, are we going to find them today? Or are we not going to find them? And depending on the rain and everything, we monitor earlier or later in the year. And we really kind of make sure we're looking at those areas from a standpoint of what, how the plant will dictate when the time to monitor it is. But it comes up with this data dashboard. Essentially, we collect all this data, it comes to this dashboard. And what do we do with this dashboard? We display it in a way that makes sense to people who are looking at it, essentially. So this is one of our populations in, this is Otay Mesa open space. So this is for one of our bird's beak, Orcud's bird's beak is the name of this plant. And you can see in 2016, it was not a great year for this plant. We had 55 individuals counted in that year. And then each year, 2017, 266, better, but still not good. 2018, we had a major issue there and didn't see any plants. And then the next year, again, an increase of 8,000 over the previous year. Some of that's related to rain. Some of that we don't really know exactly what it's related to. This plant has a almost an inverse relationship with rain, what we can't really figure out quite yet. But 2020 was not a great rain year. And that was one of the best years we've seen for this plant. But the value of this dashboard is that we've condensed lots and lots of data into one simple page that allows the people that are approving our budgets and or approving grant projects for us, allows them to see this data in a real-time standpoint that's digestible and understandable for people that don't have the extreme back knowledge that we do in our department as biologists. So you can see there that the trend is generally focusing on the upward side of things, but there's also a lot of variability in this population. The other data that we collect over time is the average cover of non-native species. So if we see in our site that we have a lot of invasive species cover. So in 2018 for that site, you saw that we didn't have any plants showed up. We also didn't have any non-native plants show up in that parcel. So that's where we can see, okay, something certainly is going wrong here and we need to figure that out if possible. But again, these monitoring data will allow us to kind of develop our plan for the year, and observe threats. So non-native grasses and non-native plants are by far the most impactful things on this in this population. So it's something we want to look at for the next year as we're moving forward to planning our year out ahead of time. We need to spend a little bit more time doing some non-native plant removal at these locations. But you can see all of this, it coalesces into these dashboards, right? So it's digital, it's accessible, and it's really, it's a nice visual kind of understanding of what's happening in these areas that we can look at, our rangers can look at, and anybody who's interested in regional conservation can also take this data and hopefully understand it in a clear and concise way. And so after all of that, all this restoration and all of our monitoring and management, what does our open space look like after the fact? And here's some beautiful photos that I wanted to share here too. We have some of our wild lilacs up on the top right, or top left, excuse me, canyons and mission trails. There's a vernal pool down the bottom left there, and this is up at Mount Woodson. We got a little snow a couple years ago up at Mount Woodson in one of our properties. So we thought that would be fun to kind of, we own just like a little postage stamp on the top of that mountain, and it's really interesting. But there's a lot of habitats within the city that are we can see in these photos that are right next to urban developed areas. We call this the wildland urban interface, or WUI as it's short. And that's where we spend a lot of our time managing, because the impacts from development and people really can have a severe impact in some of these habitats. But what we really try to do to decrease that is education. It's a huge part of it. We have our ranger program that has really been valuable, so valuable to helping educate the locals and provides the local people with a resource to go to. A local person in your neighborhood who knows the park, knows it inside and out, who can tell you, yeah, don't go off that street entrance. That's a social trail or unauthorized trail. Stay over here and whatnot. But those types of programs really help everything out. And here's some of our great endangered species. The top left there is a lot of people would say that is the bird that saved the West, the coastal California gnatcatcher, being that it has such specific habitat requirements, and that habitat is also a keystone habitat from all these other species that we're seeing here. The middle right there is a California cactus wren, also reliant on large patches of intact cactus and cholla. They don't want to see, they're visual birds, so they won't go to a habitat unless they can see it. So if there's a big patch of cactus on the hillside, that stands out from the rest of the vegetation. So they can see that habitat, fly to it. But if it's covered with non-native grasses, or if it's covered in a non-native tree or something like that, they can't see it, so they won't use it. On the top right there is one of our real charismatic species, the burrowing owl. Cute little adorable owls that really have very specific habitat requirements. And they're also really prone to being predated on by crows and ravens and hawks. So we have to give them a little bit more space. We have to really design our preserves around them. And we're working closely with organizations like the San Diego Wildlife Alliance, Zoo and Wildlife Alliance, that has really focused their conservation efforts on burrowing owls in San Diego County. We have relocation sites that are all over the county. We have lands that are preserved specifically for burrowing owls. And we have artificial burrows that we maintain for them, in the hopes that they will show up on some of our properties and proliferate and have babies. And this one here is actually on a property in Otay Mesa that we hadn't been managing for burrowing owls. We'd just been managing to keep the weeds down, and the burrowing owls found some ground squirrel burrows and have set up shop. And in the last 3 years, they've raised 13 chicks from this population. and we've banned, some of them have been banded, been captured and been banded. We've saw one that have come from a relocation project in Hamul that ended up out here. We didn't plan for this, but they're there, and now we're managing them. And so we've put out signs in English and both Spanish that in Otay Mesa to help people understand that this is not an off-leash dog area. Please keep your dogs on leash and enjoy. There's a sensitive bird here and enjoy from afar. Again, very, very simple stuff, but it's here in the city of San Diego, we got to take these opportunities to preserve these wonderful species and really kind of run with it. And we have down the bottom, we have our horned lizard, a San Diego coastal horned lizard or Blainsville horned lizard. Again, another species in peril because of endangered or invasive species. The Argentinian ant that has been taking over. There's really tiny little ants. These lizards only eat ants. 99% of their diet is ants, and they like our big harvester ants that we have out in our open spaces. They don't like the little Argentinian ants. And the Argentinian ants have displaced a lot of those native ants. So it's a hard thing when your food source is being displaced to find food, and then the one that's being displaced with you is not edible to you. So and those are some of the issues we have. The little guy in the bottom middle is a spadefoot toadlet. These are really sensitive species because they can live underground for years without coming out because of special adaptations they have to conserve moisture. So they'll be buried the adults will be buried underground for maybe a year or more. And then as the rains soften up the soil, that toad will burrow out of the soil, find its mate, lay eggs. The tadpoles will complete their metamorphosis in a very, very short period of time compared to other frogs, because that is a finite resource. That water is going to dry up. So these toadlets then, as the water dries up, they convert really quickly into toads. And they're like this little guy, and they live in these soil cracks. So if you ever walk through some of these areas, they have deep soil cracks and clay soils. And you can see as you walk by them very gently, you can see all these little eyeballs poking out from the soil cracks. But that's really moist down there, and it's cool. And they live down there for the remainder of the year and burrow in when it gets too dry, and then wait on the next rains, 6-8 months later, it could be.
Hey, Mark, we're getting a little bit pressed on time, so.
Okay. I don't have too much more, so.
Okay.
All right. Bottom right is our fairy shrimp, which are really amazing creatures in and of themselves. But, as you can see, we have so many resources here in the city of San Diego. The bottom left-hand corner is one of those species that lives nowhere else except for San Diego County. That's a small little succulent called Deadlia brevifolia or short-leaved Deadlia. The entire population, world's population, lives in the county of San Diego within a few miles of the coast. But really, I could dive into this, and I'm really passionate about this. I'm sure you probably can understand that. We have a ton of people that come visit our parks. Upwards, when we did a park use study, upwards of 2.3 million visits a year, which was more than the Padres, the Chargers, and altogether, even more than the zoo, the Grand Canyon, Yosemite. We have almost 8.4 million annual visits to our open space parks. So that gives you an idea of how popular our parks are. This study was done in 2018 or 2016. Can you imagine adding 20 to 30% on top of that? In the past few years, we've seen this huge explosion of people out in an open space. So, but the one thing that really holds it all together are people like yourselves that are interested in this, our volunteers, our site stewards, our rangers, all these folks that have really stepped up to help out, and they just do an amazing job. And I couldn't be prouder of the group, the work that we do. We have a very small team. I have 2 biologists and 4 interns, and we manage this huge parcel of land and all these rare and endangered species. But we don't do it alone. We do it with all these volunteers and conservation organizations all across the city. So if you're part of one of those conservation organizations, or if you're interested in being part of one of them, please come talk to me or talk to Marianne about how to get a hold of me, because I really want to put you in touch with somebody because we need everybody we can help out there. But also just explaining to the next person you talk to how great our open space system is and how great our conservation programs are here in the city of San Diego, please do that as well. You know, I wanted to show these are our rangers, and these are some of the crazy things that happen and they deal with on a regular basis, right? So it's always something, right? And you know, but we couldn't do it without them. So you know, thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you guys today. I can provide these links to you guys in an email. I can send it to Mary Ann, where you can look at all these things a little bit more in depth. And you know, if you really want to get into the interactive mapping tools, those are on the planning website. We have a brand new planning website called Biodiverse SD, so San Diego, but it's a play on the word biodiversity. But now we have Biodiverse SD, which really details all our plans and our programs that we do throughout the city. And again, it wouldn't be possible without the foundation that all of you retired members of the city have built. So thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak with you guys. And you know, I could go on for hours and hours here, obviously, but in the interest of time, I just want to say thank you. And I think there might be some time for questions and answers if possible, but I'll leave it there. So thank you.
Mark, that was an awesome presentation. Your passion for your program comes through loud and clear. And speaking for myself, I had no idea that anything this extensive or elaborate or successful was going on. So I want to thank you. I want to open it up. Do we have time for a few questions of Mark? Kind of raise your hands. See if we can get the gallery view back here. Mary Ann.
So Mark, we have a volunteer program coordinator, Stacy Lamitico, and I would like to give each of you the other's number so that you can connect. And I'm sure she has volunteers that would be interested. I'm a complete plant geek, so I'm interested. And there may be other people as well. So
I'm
thank
glad
you.
you said that. I was going to suggest the same thing, that we link
Yes.
him up with Stacy Lamitico, who is heading our volunteer program, because it sounds like there's some great opportunities there. Other questions of Mark?
I see in the comments, we have one of our longtime city planners, MSCP planners, Myra is making some comments in there. So thanks, Myra, for taking some of the burden off of me, because she was one of the original developers of this program. So it's awesome. I hope I did it justice.
You did a great job, Mark.
Yeah. You know, and I do have another question. I do have a question, actually. So some of those rare species that you spoke about, can people actually get them and put them in their own yards?
There are a few that are readily available, and depending on how much you want to work to find the seeds. But native plant nurseries are really, really good. So a lot of the native succulents, the Deadlias they're called,
Right.
are readily available at even commercial nurseries like Walter Anderson's or Armstrong's. And there's also seeds that you can get. So there's a great Moosa Creek is a great native plant nursery.
Yes.
Also Native West down in Otay Mesa, really good. And you can find some of these rare species. I know we have a volunteer who's found, has gotten seeds for a rare plant called the willowy monardella. He grows them in his backyard, and he has a population in his backyard that he collected from seeds at Mission Trails, seeded them in his backyard nearby, and then utilizes the seeds from those plants in his backyard to proliferate the plant in the park. And that's a program we kind of worked on for a while with him, but he's been doing this as kind of his passion project for a while. But yeah, it's certainly available. There's some of those species. Some of them only the zoo has the seeds for, through their conservation program. And some of them are just so specific on the soils and things and orientation of the light that it would be hard to grow in your backyard unless you could recreate that somehow.
Got it.
I had one question, which is this is such a, the scope and scale of your program is so extensive. But it also seems like this is a great opportunity to make the Park and Recreation Department and the city look really good. And I'm wondering if there's more that can be done to promote and publicize as a PR type of thing. It's not practical to do an hour seminar like you've done with us, but is there activities underway that helps get the word out what's been being done?
Yeah, I think one of the main ways we get our word out is, we have our annual report. We have monthly meetings with our management and regional conservation partners, but we also really rely on a lot of regional partners like San Diego Audubon and the San Diego Canyonlands and the River Park Foundation, the San Diego River Conservancy, Chaparral. So we have kind of this, I guess it's marketing by proxy, if you would say. We don't have the staff or the budget to really get out there and do a bunch of this marketing, and our social media presence is not exactly where I'd like it to be for our open space parks. But we have volunteer events every weekend, multiple volunteer events every weekend that really kind of go to the heart of our MSCP, which is management for these rare and endangered species.
All right, we have time for one more question. Do I see a hand? Oh, Mark, thank you. Oh, got one more.
David.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you having any association with Mission Trails? I live very close to Mission Trails, and I thought about getting into this because I'm a retired marine biologist, but I like going out there and looking at plants and animals. And
Yeah. Mission Trails is absolutely one of our preserves that we manage, and we have probably the largest populations of rare plants in the city in Mission Trails, in a couple of different areas. But yeah, they're out there. There's probably, I think there's like 4 different species that we monitor out there on a regular basis, and a couple others that we monitor on a every other year basis. But we've been working actively with the Mission Trails Park Foundation and some of our and Sandag to develop some restoration projects. We actually, I didn't tout it on this one, but we had a rare plant restoration project for San Diego thornmint, which again lives nowhere else except for San Diego County in the world. The population had dwindled to about 88 at one point, and as of last counting this past year, we're up to about 17 or 18,000 plants in just about 3 years of focused restoration out there at Mission Trails.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mark. Great job. I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Marianne. Thank you for setting this one up. It's a great program. Well, with that, we'll adjourn our meeting and we'll stop the recording of the meeting, Jim. And we'll end the meeting, but if you want to if people want to hang around and chit chat for a little while, we'll keep it open. So thank you again. We'll see you in July.
Hi, you guys.